Most documentaries show the World War II home front as a story of cheerful sacrifice and patriotic unity. The overlooked consequence is that by 1943, civilian malnutrition in Britain had actually become worse than in any major German city except those under direct siege. The misconception we carry is that bombing breaks civilian morale, when the data suggests the opposite. Sustained, predictable hardship often strengthens social cohesion. The truth is that civilians cope not because they are heroic, but because they are remarkably good at building informal systems that governments never plan for. And that quiet, improvised resilience is what this 6 minutes is actually about. Let's start with an overlooked decision. The British Ministry of Food never banned wasting food because they knew a ban would be unenforceable. Instead, they trusted local women to self-organize into what historians later called pantry fascism, rigid, unspoken rules about who got the last potato. Close-up of a Ministry of Information pamphlet titled "Make Do and Mend," showing how to turn a man's wool vest into a child's sweater with hand-drawn arrows. The American equivalent, run by the Office of Price Administration, made a different error. They overstandardized rationing, which created a thriving black market in Chicago and Detroit that moved more pork than the legal system. What's fascinating is that the black market wasn't run by criminals. It was run by housewives and factory workers who simply decided that federal ration points were stupid. One documented case from 1944. A woman in Cleveland traded her entire winter fuel ration for 6 jars of home-canned peaches, then burned furniture instead. The government never prosecuted her because the local ration board decided that prosecuting a mother of 3 would be bad for morale. Now, here is where the human limits become analytical. After repeated bombing, civilians develop what psychologists call anticipatory habituation. By the 3rd month of the Blitz, the average Londoner took only 4 minutes longer to fall asleep during a raid than in silence. That is not bravery. That is the nervous system learning that most bombs do not hit you. The overlooked consequence of that habituation was that civilian casualty rates actually rose after the first year, not because bombing got more accurate, but because people took fewer precautions. By 1945, the most common cause of blast injury in southern England was simply standing at a window to see what the noise was. Now connect this to later doctrine. The US military studied British civilian adaptation closely and concluded that strategic bombing alone would never break a modern industrial population. That conclusion directly informed the shift to precision munitions in the 1990s. If you cannot break their will, you target their actual machines instead. But here is the dry, wry observation. After all the bombing, the British home front's most effective coping mechanism was not shelters or fire watchers. It was the informal barter economy built entirely on small insults: a neighbor's spare milk token, a borrowed ladder, a shared tin of Spam. Governments plan for production quotas. Humans plan for who owes whom a favor. As cities endured relentless bombing, people had to adapt in ways both big and small. Daily life shifted underground. Routines bent but rarely broke. And, well, even in the worst moments, folks found new ways to help each other get by. The close-knit bonds of community became a lifeline, really, and survival often depended on the quiet, everyday acts of cooperation. That lesson matters today because every community that faces disaster, blackouts, pandemics, wildfires, rediscovers the same truth. The formal system will break. The informal system, built on grudges and small generosities, usually holds. You do not need to be a hero to cope with collapse. You just need to be useful enough that someone remembers your face. The war ended. The habits remained. For a few years, neighbors actually knew each other's names. Subscribe to War Machiner and share this if you value history that goes deeper. The home front is not a backdrop. It is the main engine.